Ohm,
Here.
Richard Peterson, Vivian Voss,
Here.
and Amanda Weaver is absent tonight.
The next order on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. Please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Is there a motion to approve the order of the agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the order of the agenda.
Is there a second?
Second.
Are there any additions or corrections to the agenda? Call for a vote.
Motion passed 6-0.
Is there a motion to approve the order of minutes for May 3rd, 2018?
Chairman, I have some corrections I'd like to make
First, we need to get a second on the motion.
to approve it. Okay.
Yeah. Is there a motion to approve the order of the minutes?
I'll make the motion to approve the minutes, May 3rd.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Are there any additions or corrections to the order of the minutes?
I have a few.
Okay.
First of all, on page 1, the top of the page heading, May 5th should be May 3rd. And then on page 3, I have a couple. The 1, 2, 3, the fourth paragraph after the Chris Ball applicant, the first paragraph there, 3 up from the bottom of that paragraph, it says traditions office space, and I would like to suggest the word traditional. And then when you go down towards the lower third of page 3, Commissioner Voss thinks outdoor storage is very broad with a period. And in the words, she also wondered what Mr. Ball's number is if 25% is too large for office space. And that's all.
Is everybody in favor of those corrections?
Yes.
Okay. Call for a vote.
Motion carried 6-0.
Okay, this is the time for any person to speak on any subject not appearing on tonight's agenda. Is anyone signed up to speak?
No.
That would conclude the public forum. Okay, I'd like to welcome the members of the public and ask that you respect the statements made by city staff, the applicant, and my fellow planning commissioners during the proceedings. It is important that the public meeting be conducted in a dignified and respectful manner. Please do not clap, yell, boo, make commentary from the audience, or otherwise disrupt the proceedings. We have the first case, which is asking for a continuance. It's case number WS-1707, an application filed by Evergreen Devco for approval of a major subdivision located west of Interstate 70, south of Highway 58, north of approximately 33rd Avenue, Clear Creek Crossing. The applicant has requested a continuance to June 7, 2018. Is there any discussion from commissioners? I would then ask for a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion. I move to postpone the public hearing for case number WS-1707, a request for approval of a subdivision containing 13 lots, 3 lots, and a right-of-way dedication located west of Interstate 70, south of Highway 58, and north of approximately 33rd Avenue, commonly known as Clear Creek Crossing, until June 7th, 2018.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Call for vote.
Motion carries 6-0.
Thank you. I would like to now reopen case number MS-17-08, an application filed by Brad Weeman for approval of a minor subdivision for 4 single-family homes for property zone residential 1 located at 3275 Quail Street. This case was previously heard and approved by Planning Commission on February 15, 2018. After approval, external factors impacted the construction of the proposed drainage, prompting the applicant to redesign the drainage facility. This will change the approved plat and is required to be reheard pursuant to section 26-408. And prior to having the staff report, could I have the applicant, staff, and anyone from the public who plans to testify or comment, please stand and raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth in this matter as you know it? Yes. Thank you. And ask for the staff report.
Okay. Good evening. For the record, Zach Wallace-Mendez, planner with the City of Wheat Ridge Community Development Department. Presenting case number MS-1708, request for approval of a 4-lot minor subdivision on property zoned residential 1. I would like to enter into the public record the contents of the case file, the zoning ordinance, the subdivision regulations, and this digital presentation. The property is within the City of Wheat Ridge. All appropriate notification and posting requirements have been met for the rehearing, and therefore Planning Commission does have jurisdiction to hear the case.
So noted.
Before I start, as you noted when you read the case, this is a kind of revisiting something that you saw back in February. It was approved by you all in February. After approval, the applicant ran into some issues with the proposed drainage, which made them kind of reconsider how they wanted to handle those major flows that currently flow through the site. They've been working with our public works staff, especially Jordan Jeffries, who is here, and if you have any drainage-specific questions, he'd be happy to answer those. They've been working with Jordan pretty closely on changes to that drainage plan until we got to something that's approvable. And pursuant to the subdivision regulations, any changes to the plat are required to be reheard by the Planning Commission, since you were the approving body. So we did not record the plat, so it never officially got subdivided. The changes came between us recording it and your approval. So, quickly, here's the aerial. The property is located on the west side of Quail Street between 32nd Avenue and 33rd Avenue. I believe it used to contain a single-family home, but I believe that home has been demoed. The applicant for this case has already purchased the property, so they are free to demo the house if they'd like. As you can see, the surrounding area is primarily single-family homes. We have to the east some smaller lot single-family. To the north, a little bit larger lot single-family. Quail Hollow is right here, and then on the other side of this church here is the Mirkwood Estates subdivision, which does not yet show up on our maps, but that was subdivided into 7 lots, also zoned R1. So this whole area is zoned R1. So all of the lots in this area are in our largest lot single-family zone district, so 12,500 square feet or larger, single-family homes only. And that's what's in this entire area. All the R1, R1A is all single-family homes. And it also allows for some civic uses like the school up here and the church, obviously. A few images, just quickly. This is the view looking on 32nd Avenue, looking west. There's an existing bus stop there. This is the view of Quail Street, looking northwest. You can see the home in this image, which I believe is no longer there. And a closer view of the home. I guess I should have deleted that one. And here you can see the Quail Hollow homes that are being built, just basically adjacent to this property. Those were approved several years ago. Subdivision 101, just a reminder, subdivision is a reconfiguration of lots, tracts, or parcels for sale or development. So it does create property lines. It does allow the city to review its right-of-way and request additional right-of-way if the existing right-of-way is substandard. And it does allow the city to evaluate civil documents such as traffic and drainage. It does not change the zoning. It does not change the permitted uses. And we don't look at how things fit on the site. So no site plans, no building placement, anything like that. So sheet 1 is just our standard title blocks, legal description, signature blocks, things like that. I believe there's also a table showing how large all the lots and tracts are. I know this isn't readable, but you do have readable copies in your packets as well. The second image is the graphic portion, or the second page is the graphic portion of the plat document. And this shows what is getting dedicated, what is being vacated, where new lot lines are going, if there are lot lines being vacated, where those are occurring. So this is a closer view of that. And I'll go through kind of everything that's being proposed here step by step. So currently, there's a large drainage way that passes through the site that is proposed to be vacated. That drainage way is proposed to be vacated. There is a little bit of right-of-way dedication, about 1.5 feet along Quail Street and about, I believe, 5.5 feet along 32nd Avenue. And then the blue lines are what is proposed to be the new lot lines. So this is one lot going into 4. Additionally, there are easements and tracts platted. So around all of the properties, we have what is a 10-foot easement in the front, a 30-foot easement in the rear for drainage and utilities, and 5-foot easements on the sides in between the properties. And then there's a tract along 32nd Avenue and a small tract up near 33rd, kind of close to the Quail Hollow subdivision. And then within this rear easement, Tract A and Tract B, in addition to this easement, this yellow easement over here, will be pipes, kind of re-navigating the historic drainage through the property into these pipes and through until it reaches what Quail Hollow proposed for their drainage improvements, which eventually gets the water all out to Lena Gulch. So I wanted to show kind of what we're looking at now, and then what you approved before, just so we can see what those differences are. So again, this is what we just looked at, and this is what you approved before. So as you can see, Tract A was much longer and went the whole length of the property along the west side. It actually curved up along 32nd Avenue. This was proposed to be an open channel at that point in time in the rear with a pipe up along 32nd Avenue. The pipe remains along 32nd Avenue, but the open channelway has been enclosed into a pipe in this easement in the rear. And as such, since it's not in a tract in an easement, that is on the properties rather than being its own separate kind of parcel, if you will. So all of the lots have become a little bit larger in size. Their lot frontage along Quail has remained the same, but they have become larger by square footage. So again, I can kind of switch back and forth really quick so you can see those differences. So this is what was proposed before, and this is what is being proposed now. So you can see the main difference is that tract goes away in the rear and the lots become larger. So because the change was relatively minor in terms of being able to serve the property, we did not send this back out on referral. Except to the Public Works Department. So the Public Works Department has reviewed the plat and all the civil documents, and they are approvable. Again, West Metro can still serve the property, as can Excel, CenturyLink, sanitation. All of those folks are still able to serve the property. It does not affect that. So in conclusion, staff would recommend approval of the plat, as all agencies can serve the property and all the requirements of the subdivision regulations have been met. We still would like to have our conditions, some of our conditions on the plat, namely that no building permits can be issued until the house is demoed, which I believe it is already. That a subdivision improvement agreement is required, and that an HOA is required. There were about 6 conditions on the original plat. 2 of them regarded adding notes, which the applicant has done and are included in the subdivision plat that they are proposing now. And another one asks that they pay parkland fees in lieu of dedication, which they have already paid as we started. After approval of your approval in February, they paid those fees, so they don't need to repay them. So that is why the conditions have shrunk quite a bit. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions. The applicant is here if you have any questions for them as well. But I don't believe you'd like to make a presentation at this time.
Thank you. Commissioner Peterson? Commissioner Buckman? Commissioner Dorsey? Commissioner Larson?
No questions.
Commissioner Voss?
I do have one in that the February 15th meetings had, that were reprinted for us. Clarification on the Forestry Division's referral comments related to the landscaping, and it was commented that the design standards have recently been adopted, includes making open channel drainage more natural with native seats. So now we've done away with the open channel. So what's the consideration on the Forestry Division's referral comments on the landscaping?
Sure. Well, now that just falls into private property, so they would fall subject to our single-family landscaping requirements, which requires that at least 25% of the lot is landscaped and at least 100% of the front yard is landscaped. There's minimal things that they can do within this easement. So there's no sheds that should be built in that easement, or no structures of any kind, really. Its only purpose really is for landscaping, to be honest. But that would all be, each individual lot owner's responsibility at this point.
Thank you.
And just to mention, Tract A and Tract B do still conform with our landscaping requirements for drainage areas. They had landscaping plans in their civil documents that we reviewed against that provision of our code.
Commissioner Liu? No. So could you just clarify again that the condition 1 says, it talks about a demolition permit for the existing home, but there's no existing home?
I believe. So I just heard that anecdotally, that I believe they either have a demo permit for it or it's already down.
Okay.
But I think we'd still like to keep that condition.
Okay.
Just in case it hasn't been knocked down yet or whatever the case may be.
Okay. Are there any other questions for staff? Okay, thank you. Would the applicant like to come forward and make a presentation? Okay. Do any of the commissioners have questions for the applicant? No? Okay. We will now move on to the citizens forum. Are there any citizens that have signed up to speak? Is there anybody in the audience that wishes to come forward to speak? I will close the citizens forum. At this point, I would entertain a motion.
I move to recommend approval of case number MS 1708, a request for approval of a 4-lot subdivision on property zoned residential 1, R1, and located at 3275 Quail Street for the following reasons. All agencies can provide services to the property with improvements installed at the developer's expense. The requirements of Article 4 of the Zoning and Development Code have been met. With the following conditions: no building permit shall be issued for lots 1 or 2 until a demolition permit is issued for the existing home. The developer shall enter into a subdivision improvement agreement whereby all required infrastructure improvements are in place prior to issuance of building permits for individual lots. And the homeowners association covenants be reviewed and approved by staff prior to issuance of building permits.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Any discussion? Call for vote.
Motion carried 7-0.
Thank you. Okay, I would now like to open a public hearing for case numbers WZ-17-08/7955 West 42nd Avenue for approval of a zone change from residential 2 to planned residential development, PRD, with an outline development plan. Case number WZ-17-09/7955 West 42nd Avenue for approval of a specific development plan. Case number WS-17-05/4255 Euro and 7955 West 42nd Avenue for approval of a 73-lot subdivision plat. Case number WS-17-06/4255 Euro and 7955 West 42nd Avenue for approval of a second filing of the subdivision's first filing for an additional 16 lots, and ask for the staff report.
So how, my plan of attack, just like with the packet, is I've divided, there's 4 requests. I divided them between the zone change and SDP and then the plat. So we're going to hear about the zone change first. And I would note that if the outline development plan is not recommended for approval, I think we should still go on with making a vote on the specific development plan. But technically, it wouldn't count, but it could be overturned by City Council. So having said all that, Meredith Reckert, Wheat Ridge Community Development Department, and joining me at the staff table is, again, Zach Wallace-Mendez and Jordan Jeffries, who's one of our development review engineers in Public Works. So this is a request for a zone change to planned residential development with an outline development plan and a specific development plan at 7955 West 42nd Avenue. Property is zoned R2. I would like to enter into the record the comprehensive plan, the zoning ordinance, the case file and packet materials, and the contents of this digital presentation. The property is within the city of Wheat Ridge, and all appropriate posting and notification have been met. Therefore, there is jurisdiction to hear this case. All 4 of these cases are required to accommodate an 89-unit townhouse development on the combined properties located on 42nd Avenue in combination with 4255 Yarrow. So, again, we've got some newer folks on the commission, so I thought I'd take just a little bit of time and talk about our process. Our plan development process is a 2-step process. The first step is approval of a zone change and the outline development plan, which accompanies the zone change. The ODP establishes allowed uses, development standards like setbacks, height, densities, and so on, and design concepts like access points, general structure locations, and so on. If step 1, which is the zone change and ODP, are approved, then they can proceed to step number 2, which is the specific development plan. And the SDP establishes the specific design for the property, and again, including landscaping, building size and siding, landscaping again, architecture, also requires drainage review, traffic analysis, civil construction documents, and so on. Step 1 and 2 can be processed concurrently or broken apart and applied for separately. In this case, the applicant is requesting the concurrent review. So Planning Commission will be giving a recommendation to City Council, who is the final authority for all 4 of the cases that we're considering tonight. So Some of this might look familiar to the folks who've been on the commission for a few years. The property in question is outlined in red. 44th Avenue runs up here at the top of the image. It's off the screen. Yarrow extends south from it into 42nd Avenue, which dead ends at the front of the subject site. 4255 Yarrow was rezoned in 2017 from R2 to mixed-use neighborhood, and there was substantial contamination from the former greenhouses on the property, and that is in the process of being remediated. So this slide looks very different because this entire building is gone, as is this down here. The subject property, again, is outlined in red. Its current zoning is R2, and there's an existing single-family home located on the western portion of the property, and the rest is currently vacant. The intent of this application is to rezone the property, to assemble it with the larger piece, and then to have an overall development. I would point out that 42nd Avenue, as it comes in again, terminates in a cul-de-sac bowl, but there is a right-of-way that extends further to the west, the length of the property. So, zoning on the site. This is a bigger picture, shows more context with, again, 44th Avenue running along the north, to the north of both the parcels. This is Yarrow as it extends to the south and turns into 42nd Avenue. The site we're looking at, 7955 West 42nd, is zoned R2, and it's represented by this green area. The property to the north, 4255 Yarrow, is zoned MUN pursuant to that zone change. I believe it was WZ 1608. On 44th Avenue, this red color represents commercial zoning. This sort of periwinkle color runs along Wadsworth and 44th, and it is zoned mixed-use commercial and was zoned by the city, I want to say 5 or so years ago. And to the south, in addition to the site being zoned R2, we've got some low-density residential, and then more notably, the playfields for the Wilmore Davis Elementary School, all zoned R2. This little piece over here, which you can see a little bit of, is Happiness Gardens, which is a city-owned community garden, also zoned R2. So just to go through a few slides. So this is standing about where the driveway for the existing home comes off into the property. This is the house at the rear. This is the vacant lot on the eastern portion. I'm looking northwest. A better view of the driveway and the home extending back there. That home is to remain and is in pretty good condition. This is looking, I believe, to the northeast at some of the remediation that's occurring on the other site, as well as some grubbing that's been occurring on the site. So, the applicant is requesting this. A zone change to PRD from R2 and approval of an outline development plan. The existing zoning on the property is R2, which allows low-density residential, single-family, and two-family construction. And again, the intent is to allow construction of 16 townhomes on the eastern portion of the property, with the house on the western piece or portion remaining. So included in your packet is a 2-page document, which is the outline development plan. Again, the ODP is a document that establishes allowed uses and development for the property, and it contains, a general concept plan, which includes, a conceptual layout, architectural theme, site design standards, and access points. This first sheet that we're looking at on the screen is what I call the declaration page, and it contains certifications, legal descriptions, signature blocks, and so on, also including on the page of this document is a character of development paragraph that I believe is up in the left-hand corner. This is the second page of the document, which is the sketch plan. And what we've done here is, actually the parcel is located right here, north is to the top. Yarrow Street is shown coming down on the eastern side, turning into 42nd. This is where that cul-de-sac dead ends at the property. So the property is divided into two portions. The eastern planning area, which will be utilized for the 16 additional townhome properties. The western planning area will accommodate the existing house. What we're calling the WPA, which is the western portion, it contains the house and yard with roughly 4/10 of an acre of land. In addition to the house, access is shown from the ring road to the north. So currently, the access point comes from that dead-end cul-de-sac into the property to the house. With the redevelopment, the house will now gain access from the ring road to the north. Allowed uses in the WPA are single-family homes, duplexes, and typical residential accessory structures like accessory buildings, the keeping of pets, and so on. A provision has been included so that if the western portion is added to as a future phase of the townhouse, it will fall back to the standards for the eastern portion. The eastern portion of the property, again, is shown conceptually as having 16 townhomes grouped in 3 and 5 unit buildings. Access is from 42nd Avenue at this location, which comes up and will connect with that ring road to the north. Access to these units comes off this access into, I guess, what I would call an alley. Density in this phase alone is 19.5 units per acre with an allowed density in the PRD zoning of 21. So this is just a little chart that shows the differences between what's allowed and what's being proposed. There actually is an error on this. The R2 is correct, this should be PRD, so that we're looking at the existing and proposed zoning. So again, uses on the R2 piece, R2 zoning, single and two-family residential. With the PRD zoning, it will be 16 townhomes plus the existing house staying on the property. In the R2 zone district, there are no architectural standards. In the PRD zoning, we will be following the mixed-use standards out of the zoning code. Both of the zonings allow a 35-foot height limitation. The landscaping on the R2 is not specified. In the PRD, it's 20% minimum, and density 7 units per acre on R2 and 21 with the PRD. So, as the commission is aware, we do have specific zone change criteria that we use when we evaluate a zone change request. And with that criteria, the staff has made the following conclusions. We've concluded that the eastern portion of the property, which is currently the vacant portion, is underutilized, and the PRD is expected to add value. We've looked at a traffic analysis and have concluded that the streets can support the traffic that will be generated with the new development, and that finally a traffic signal at the 44th and Yarrow intersection is not warranted. We've gone out on a full referral to all the outside agencies, with them, all of them responding that they can serve the property with improvements installed at the developer's expense. We've concluded that there is no error in the zoning map, and we've also concluded that there's a change in the character area due to the transitional, what's happening, I guess, with the 44th and Wadsworth sort of quadrant of intersection. 44th carries between 11,000 and 12,000 vehicles per day, and land use on it includes commercial, residential, and multifamily. And we're starting to see investment in that with new construction. There have been some new medical office buildings that have been built right on 44th in proximity to the site. Also, we have a new assisted living facility right on the corner of 44th and Yarrow. Wadsworth is classified as a major regional arterial and can carry up to 55,000 vehicles per day. In 1959, it was paved as a two-lane road, and obviously it is inadequate to deal with today's traffic and any sort of future development that we've got. It's actually one of the most heavily traveled corridors in the metropolitan area, so there's a lot of heavy congestion and frequent accidents. Staff has been working with CDOT, collaborating for the last 5 years on the reconstruction of Wadsworth. We're in the process of finalizing the environmental assessment for construction of the new corridor configuration, and construction is expected to commence in 2020. And we've concluded that the zone change will promote reuse and redevelopment of the property and the site to the north, which could act as a catalyst for additional redevelopment and property investment in the area. I skipped over the comprehensive plan. I'd like to spend a little bit more time with that. To me, that's probably one of the more significant criteria that we look at when we do our analysis. So this top image is a image that came out of the structure plan of the comp plan, which was adopted in 2009. 44th Avenue runs up here at the top. This is Wadsworth over here with the red designation and so on. This is Yarrow as it comes down and then turns into 42nd Avenue. The property we're talking about is located right here. To the west is the Happiness Gardens city-owned facility, and then this blue portion to the south is Wilmer Davis Elementary School. The structure plan again depicts 44th Avenue up here at the top as a neighborhood commercial corridor. Those are represented by the pink dots. And it transitions to neighborhood, which is this yellow to the south. And again, Happiness Gardens over here is green. Goals identified for neighborhood commercial corridors include improvement of underutilized properties, increasing housing options, ensuring quality design, and finally, redevelopment and reinvestment in underutilized areas. The category of neighborhood is typically bounded by arterial or collector streets, and we further break down that classification into established neighborhoods and areas for revitalization. Revitalization areas are usually about at least over a half an acre in size, and have pockets of property that might benefit from reinvestment. And a lot of times we will see on these areas dilapidated structures, code enforcement issues, and so on. Neighborhood buffers, which is the brown area, are located on the edges of neighborhoods and function as buffers and can be in transitional use from the heavier corridors to a lower density type of housing or use. Other goals met with the proposal include redevelopment and reinvestment in underutilized properties, and rezoning of the site will support redevelopment of 4255 Yarrow and provide for diverse housing options. This lower image is from the Wadsworth Corridor Plan. The property is located right in here. Again, this is 44th Avenue to the north. This is Wadsworth. This is Yarrow coming down, turning into 42nd Avenue. It's located just to the west of the Wadsworth subarea corridor, where it's identified as medium density residential with targeted densities up to 21 units per acre. So the process for the ODP and zone change included a neighborhood meeting, which was held on September 13th. There were 5 folks in attendance. A couple of those were property owners. We did have a few folks from the neighborhood. There was some concern about traffic, but in general, folks were pretty excited to see something happen on this property. In response to the public hearing noticing for tonight, I received one phone call. This person was curious about the proposed rezoning and was again encouraged to see something happening on this site. And we did not receive any letters of objection or support. We went on our 15-day referral, which is standard for any of our land use applications. We didn't get any concerns from city departments or agencies. All of them did comment the developer is responsible for the required improvements to the property. And the next steps after tonight will be city council review of the zone change, ODP, SDP, and plats at public hearing scheduled for June 11th. And then the next step after that would be a building permit. So the second piece of this presentation would be the specific development plan. Once again, the outline development plan, once it's approved, can proceed with the specific development plan, which carries more of the details of the development. We're looking at landscaping, architecture, and so on. This particular plan set contains 7 sheets. And I would note that the numbering is a little bit off because as I was working with the developer, we were inserting changes as I was writing the report. So I'm not going to go page by page through this, but I will hit on the highlights of that. So of course, this again is our declaration page. It's got all the legal descriptions, the vicinity map, some of the numbers that we're looking at and so on. It's also got signature blocks. The second page that I'm looking at is the actual site plan for the development. And again, 44th Avenue would be up here at the top off the page. Yarrow Street comes down and turns into 42nd Avenue, which then ends in a cul-de-sac at the corner of the property. This is the proposed site plan for the project. You can see that we've got the existing house on the western portion with its access coming off the ring road to the north. The primary access or the secondary access for the development will come in off 42nd Avenue and attach with this ring road, which again is off the property but adjacent. And that's why we're showing the proposed development in full tone, but then the 4255 Yarrow portion in halftone. So you can see how the two properties intersect and that the access kind of plays off each other and so on. Let's see. The SDP shows 16 units in groups of 5 and 3 coming off an alley that extends off the access from 42nd Avenue. Both of the rows of houses face out in that this would be the rear access for tuck-under garages for all of the units so that they would either face the ball fields on Wilmore Davis to the south or face onto the ring road and the rest of the units within the development plan. The southern row of units does have an extended parking pad behind it, behind the garages, and there's also some parking pullouts for ancillary parking for those units on the north portion of the site. This is the landscape plan for the property. They've got pretty good pedestrian access with 5-foot wide perimeter sidewalks on all sides. There's also a north-south connection at this location right in here. I believe that's noted as tract G, adjacent to the house, again would be over here. There's also other internal connections that are not paved but have crusher fines, but it still would allow access. So 42nd Avenue, as it comes in off Yarrow, does dead end right here at the corner of the property. However, there is right-of-way that goes further to the west, and the applicant is going to be required to provide an off-site path that connects with the Happiness Gardens along the south side of the project. Here are some of the facades of the building. This would be the front facade of one of the 3 units. The building height is approximately 33 feet high at mid-roof, which is consistent with the height maximum allowed. They're also meeting the architectural requirements of the mixed-use zoning. That includes build-tos of 62% on primary frontages and 68% on the secondary. The facade design includes belt courses, expression of architectural bays, structural features, and changes in material. All of the units will have front balconies, and some have side balconies. There are also entrance features with changes in plane, enhanced lighting, and so on. Staff does conclude that there is substantial compliance with the standards of the mixed-use zone district. And again, this is another view of the facades. These are the rear facades where we've got the tuck-under garages, and then these are the side elevations. So we have more criteria to talk about. So in order to approve a specific development plan, they do have to meet the criteria that's outlined in the code. And staff has drawn the following conclusions. The purpose of a plan development is to permit well-designed innovative development, which may not be feasible under standard zoning, and also to promote flexible and efficient use of land. We felt like the PRD zoning was the only option for this location. It was a little bit too far off the 44th Avenue corridor to qualify as mixed-use zoning. In R3, it is not an option because the density standards and design could not be accommodated with that. So the PRD zoning made sense in this context. The SDB is consistent with the intent and purpose of the ODP for a moderate density townhome development, and it is consistent with the uses, as that's the only allowed use, the townhouses in the eastern planning area on the ODP. We've concluded that the site plan is consistent with the development guidelines established on the ODP, including setbacks, height, parking, and so on. All utilities can serve the property with improvements installed at the developer's expense. And finally, that the proposed design is consistent with the standards and the mixed-use neighborhood zone district criteria. And so staff does conclude that the criteria used to evaluate the SDP recommends support. So there's some overriding issues that are going to apply to each and all of the pieces of this approval. The first one are the agency referrals. Again, we did our standard 15-day referral, and all responding agencies can serve the property with improvements installed at the developer's expense. The Parks Commission, or the Parks Department, recommended fees in lieu of land dedication in the amount of about $2,500 per unit, and typically that is paid at the time of recordation of the plat and the SIA. Public improvements will be required along both the Yarrow and 42nd Avenue frontages with installation of curb gutter and sidewalk for both of those. The drainage design has been reviewed by our Public Works Department, and they have indicated that the water is conveyed to the northeast corner of the site. It's released into Yarrow and then flows to 44th and Wadsworth into an existing inlet. Finally, the traffic analysis. Public Works has reviewed a traffic impact analysis and concluded that the existing street system can handle traffic generated by the development. The analysis, after they've reviewed the analysis, they have concluded that a traffic light at 42nd and Yarrow does not meet the warrants and is not recommended. And finally, proposed improvements to the Wadsworth corridor will mitigate some of the existing and future conditions regarding traffic. I have this loaded just in case you have questions for Jordan to discuss what's proposed with Wadsworth. So in conclusion, staff is recommending approval with conditions for both of the applications in this presentation. The first one being zone change in ODP. We've concluded that it will promote the public health, safety, or welfare. It's consistent with the goals and objectives of the comp plan and Wadsworth sub-area plan. It will promote redevelopment and revitalization and may be a catalyst for other investment in the area. And finally, that the evaluation criteria support approval of the request. There were, I believe, were 3 or 4 conditions included in your recommended motion that I would, if you make a positive motion, that should be included. Regarding the specific development plan, we've concluded that it's consistent with the purpose of a plan development application. It's in substantial compliance with the mixed-use zoning requirements. The site design and use are consistent with the outline development plan. All requirements for an SDP have been met. And again, there, I believe, were 3 or 4 conditions in the recommended motion. So that does conclude my presentation, and I guess I'd be open for questions. Keep in mind that we do have another set of presentation to go through, so if you want to ask about the zoning piece right now, that would be fine.
Commissioner Peterson?
I'm not sure when to ask this question, whether I should wait until we get to the next segment or whether I should ask it now, so I'm going to ask it now.
Okay.
I understand what's going on here, but I'm wondering why it is that someone didn't just combine these 2 properties into one.
That's a good question, and I'll let the applicant address that. The next application we're going to look will combine the 2 properties. So that,
Right,
that is
but right now we're shoehorning a piece CD into, in combination with an MUN to come up with one cohesive housing unit. And it seems to me that it's kind of awkward. So if somebody could explain why it's not awkward, I'd be happy to hear it.
It is awkward, and it was a challenge to process and to write the reports. So I think we'll hold off on the answer to that.
So the second part?
Well, so till when the applicant has the opportunity to speak.
Commissioner Buckman?
Yeah, just a question on the zoning part of it. So I'm looking at the zoning map, Exhibit 3. I see that along 44th, we have a lot of Commercial 1. We've got the mixed-use commercial along Wadsworth and at the intersection of 44th. The lower density residential out near Wilmore Davis and points southwest from there. And we do have that chunk of R3 running right along the east side of Yarrow. I know that the next case we're hearing and what's part of this larger development is zoned MUN, but given the density that we're talking about here, I'm curious, and I'm not disagreeing with the idea that planned development isn't a good thing. I think it's a good thing, but in terms of using the mixed-use neighborhood standards, as opposed to the, say, an R3 set of standards, what was the thinking on staff's part there?
The R3 zone district only allows up to 12 units per acre, and they've got way different development standards than the mixed-use zoning. The mixed-use requires a build-to, whereas the R3 has more of a traditional big front yard, a 30-foot setback, and since this piece was being developed and we are going to apply the mixed-use neighborhood standards, it just made sense to have this follow the same thing, because we obviously want one cohesive project that all works together.
Mm-hmm. I guess my, just something else I'm thinking about here is we just have we have these 2 sort of isolated islands of R3 and MUN. I know there's some R3 to the north of 44th as well. It's just barely visible on this exhibit, but there's more of it up there. I guess the one concern I'm just kind of wrestling with is the potential redevelopment, down the road of something that's zoned MUN could be repurposed for any sort of development. And we have it backing right up to, the community garden, which isn't so bad. We've got it backed up to athletic fields of the school, that's not so bad. But we've got these more low development housing, to the southeast of the subject property. And the characteristic of the neighborhood to the south, south of 41st, and to the west is definitely much more lower density residential. So I guess that's just the concern I have as far as going MUN versus. And I'm not advocating for MUN. I'm a big fan of the building standards and stuff that we have in there. I don't know. It just seems a little like we're putting a little island of potential commercial development down the road, not by this developer, but.
So you're saying that you have concerns because this existing MUN, which was approved 2 years ago, could redevelop in 25, 30 years into something commercial? Is that your concern?
Yeah. Well, just that we're kind of expanding upon that here with this new one, but I don't know. I just wanted the rationale between the R3 and the MUN, so you've answered that for me.
I did.
Thank you.
Can I jump in and add something as well, Meredith?
Yes, sure.
So part of your concern is actually why we steered them towards a planned residential development for that southern piece. I think we recognize that MUN kind of getting down towards Yarrow Court where it transitions to R2 was maybe kind of iffy, and we didn't want to rezone that 7955 to MUN as well. So we're sticking with the MUN standards in terms of design so it can match and be a cohesive development, but not in terms of uses. I think the uses are restricted, at least for this part that's planned or proposed to be planned residential development, to only being residential development. So we had those same concerns, which is why we steered them towards PRD rather than trying to rezone it to MUN as well.
Okay. Yeah, that makes total sense. All right. Thanks.
Commissioner Dorsey? Commissioner Larson?
No questions.
Commissioner Voss?
Yes, I do. So this site that you're showing here on this map, Meredith, is just what we're zoning today, because the other has been MUN.
That's right.
But the blue MUN is undeveloped. I'm asking, is it undeveloped?
Well, these are older aerial photos taken in 2016. So these greenhouses have been demolished that you can see in the photograph. Let's see.
Right.
So all these buildings are gone.
Right. But there's nothing there. I'm kind of confused with the 7955 site and then the 4255. When are those coming together? As one development?
So I think 4255 Yarrow, I believe, was first acquired by the applicant and rezoned to MUN with the townhome concept in mind. And I think while they started developing that concept, they were able to acquire 7955 West 42nd. So that's why it's in two pieces. And to what I mentioned to Commissioner Bucknam's point, we didn't think that 7955 was the best location for MUN. So that's why they're separate and different, is because the developer acquired them at separate times.
Okay.
So if that helps.
Well, but 4255 is undeveloped at this time.
Correct.
Correct. Okay. And that's the one where Ellen was talking about what possibly could go in there under the MUN versus what's the surrounding area of mostly residential, whether it's townhomes or not. And then another question is 7955 includes the house. What's the house doing? I mean,
The house is remaining the same.
it's already lived in and occupied?
Oh, yeah,
and-
yes.
Oh,
It's-
okay.
It's in pretty good shape, and when we approved the outline development plan, I talked about us approving two different planning areas, the western planning area and the eastern planning area. So the western planning area just has the house with it, in it, which is to remain, and it's supposed to remain, even though the zoning's changing, it will remain with the R2 use regulations. So the only thing, if this house goes away, that could be built would be other single families or duplexes. Then the eastern planning area is where the townhouses will be built, and that's on this vacant portion right here.
So I rather assume that if the applicant owns the property to the west, including the house, that they get to do whatever they want with the tenant
Well, yeah, I mean, it's
down the
private
road
property.
to redevelop it in addition.
At this point, they're not wanting to
Right,
redevelop
but they
it.
can.
They want it to remain as
Right.
house.
Okay.
Any other questions?
No, that's fine.
Commissioner Leo? I have a couple questions. On the cover sheet, it's listed as 0.74 acres, and then on page 4, it says the eastern planning area is 0.8, and the western planning area is 0.4, but then on the Exhibit 1, it's 1.31 acres. What is the correct acreage?
Well, I was having a problem with that because we've had different versions of the plat, and I was having a trouble making the numbers fit. I believe it's 1.2 acres, 0.4,
Okay.
and 0.8
Okay.
on the eastern portion.
Okay. And then looking on this, there's a couple references to access. On page 4, it states that the western planning area has access from the ring road to the north. So my question is, does the adjacent property, the 4255 Yarrow Street to the north, currently have an access easement in place granting access to the subject property?
No, but it will by the next staff report. Those access easements are going to be presented.
Right, but as this is a separate case, the proposal is proposing access where it legally does not have access. Correct? That's what it sounds like. I understand that maybe down the road in a couple more cases tonight that will resolve this, but currently, if we just approved just this and nothing else,
They have no access. Yep.
they have no legal access.
Unless there's other provisions that they've made that I'm not aware of.
Okay.
Could have had some other instrument recorded that allowed that access to occur.
So it may come up in a discussion, would the fire department and city sign off on not having that access if there's no legal access? For this specific case, just this specific case. I'll let you think about that. You don't have to answer that, but that's, and then on page 11, in reference to the traffic signal, the traffic analysis states that the warrant was only met when school traffic was considered. Therefore, for much of the year, the warrant would not be met. However, school is in session for 9 months out of the year, meaning that the warrant is met for 9 months out of the year. Please explain the Public Works comment.
So the warrant's actually met right now with current traffic, with school traffic. The particular warrant it meets is warrant number 2. I think you need 8 hours that exceed 80 vehicles per hour, and currently there's 4. When you add the proposed traffic, it's still only 4 hours. But just because you meet a warrant doesn't mean you automatically have to put a traffic signal in. You also have to look at other factors and use engineering judgment. And Public Works took a look at this intersection, and it just isn't a good intersection for a signal. Yarrow Street is misaligned, so you'd have to add an additional timing cycle in there, which would further delay traffic on 44th. And the upcoming improvements to Wadsworth will make a signal there less desirable when those happen as well. So, Public Works took a deeper look at this and just doesn't think it's a good intersection for a signal.
And I know there were some, so I guess some of my concern is that if the warrant is being met 9 months out of the year, and I understand the traffic signal is not justified, does that warrant extending 42nd Avenue to the west through Happiness Gardens to Ammons in order to prevent traffic going through the school year 9 months out of the year. Happiness Gardens is May, June, July, August, maybe September. The school's in session for 9 months. And I also understand that there's discussion about, I think, continuing 42nd going east to Wadsworth. I don't know if that would be that wouldn't be I guess would it be a right in, right out? I don't know that onto Wadsworth. But that's some other discussions. I understand going west may have, it would avoid the school, but it's going to go through Happiness Gardens, which it does, there is an existing right-of-way, and it would go by the 2 houses there. So what's your thoughts on that?
So I don't think currently there's any plans to extend 42nd to the west. I know Public Works supports an extension to the east, and there's 2 private property owners in the way. One of them is on board with that, and I'm not sure about the second property owner. We feel like that property will probably develop after Wadsworth is widened, and at that point, we think there's probably a good chance that when that does redevelop, we'll make 42nd continue through to Wadsworth to the east. Any plans for extending to the west, I think that's way down the road, 20 years maybe. I don't think a serious look has really been taken at that at this point.
Okay. And then I have one last question. On page 13, criteria number 5 states that adequate infrastructure facilities are available to serve the subject property, or the applicant will upgrade and provide such where they do not exist or are under capacity. Is there an existing storm system that the applicant can tie into?
There isn't. The closest storms at 44th and Wadsworth, along Wadsworth. But current conditions are basically everything drains to Yarrow Street, flows to the north, and then flows east on 44th. So those historical drainage patterns will be maintained. Their detention basin is oversized, and it will actually reduce the flows from what's out there now. So Public Works was happy with that.
Okay. Are there any other questions for staff? Yes.
I just have a quick one. I guess I'm into awkward tonight, I guess. The right-of-way, the West 42nd Avenue right-of-way, it now ends in a turnaround. And on the outline development plan, the top part of the turnaround is omitted, but it's still sort of a strange way to get to the private road. Does Public Works or do you folks have any plans for the remaining piece of the turnaround?
Well, part of the second set of documents that we're going to talk about tonight vacates the northern portion of this.
Right.
So right now it comes in and it is a cul-de-sac bolt, and then I believe it's the first plat we'll look at, it vacates that northern portion, goes back to the property owner.
Right. I'm wondering.
It's an existing condition. We kind of see it as an extra area for parking. It is part of the public street system.
Okay, but it's no longer a useful part of the public street system. The non-vacated part, the bottom part of the, what's it called, a bolt? I call it a turnaround.
The cul-de-sac bolt.
Yeah. That's not a useful piece of street anymore, is it?
It still will provide a turnaround for folks who come in. If they come in off 42nd Avenue, they could either turn around here or go up through the development and exit out onto Yarrow.
Okay. So currently there are no plans to do anything with the non-vacated part?
Right.
Okay.
Any other questions for staff? Thank you. Let's hear from the applicant. If you could come forward and please state your name and address.
Hi, my name's Cameron Bertrand. I live at 1145 Gaylord Street in Denver, and I am the manager of EFG Yarrow LLC, which is technically the ownership entity in the applicant.
Thank you.
So I wanted to say a couple of things. First off, thank you all. We are in the somewhat awkward position of we came in this development starting with 4255 Yarrow Street and then making our way to this property. You're now approving it in reverse order, so I think that creates some of the confusion. So just a little bit in the way of context, we were here about a year ago. We had acquired the greenhouse from the greenhouse owner. Enviro Finance Group is a brownfield redeveloper. We specifically buy properties that are contaminated, that are sitting vacant, that are blighted eyesore. We work with the state to remediate them. We work with the jurisdictions to plan them and redevelop them consistent with plans. And then we exit to vertical developers. And that was our intention with that site. And just to update from what Meredith said, the contamination on this site is actually complete. We've completed the remediation. We've completed it to residential standards. The closure report is in with the state already. In addition to asbestos in tanks and fuel contamination, we removed about 4,000 yards of contaminated pesticide soil out of the greenhouse and about 7,000 yards of contaminated soil from under the greenhouse. So today the site is safe and clean for residential development, which was our intention. We originally picked MUN zoning because it was the zoning in the Wheat Ridge zoning code that best suited townhome development, and townhome development is what we were after. We were encouraged at the time by both staff and city council to work closely with the neighbors, and in particular, the neighbor whose property was sort of boxed out by that original greenhouse site, namely the house that you're looking at today. We reached out to those neighbors early as well as the school and worked with them, originally trying to say, let's plan the site that we're developing with the future of your property in mind. They eventually reached a point where they said, you know what, we think what makes the most sense is to redevelop it now. We're not in the redevelopment business. What we'd like to do is sell you our property. So we went under contract with them after we had rezoned the original property, MUN. We eventually acquired the site from them. We leased the house back to them while they found a new house. They have since found that house. They've moved into a new house, and we have leased that house to new tenants. So just a little bit of background in terms of how that all comes about. When we were planning this site, it immediately made sense with the balance of the other site to lay it out the way you see here. There was some strong encouragement from the neighborhood to keep the original house there. We think it's a great asset. It ties it into the history of the area. It fits nicely in the corner. So we designed this with that in mind. And so that is just a little bit of the background that brings us here. Before I jump to some of the questions that got asked, I did want to say that I did mention we are a land developer and a remediator, not a vertical developer. We partnered with Thrive Home Builders, who's also here tonight. They're a local developer, well known for sustainable development. They've developed in Wheat Ridge before. They've been a great partner. We're excited to hand this off to them to build the units that you see there today. So it should be a fairly seamless process. One of the questions that got asked was, I think, about the phasing of the development. I just want to be clear that while you're approving or being asked to approve an ODP and an SDP for the bottom left-hand corner and then a plat for the balance of the site, once all of this is approved to the development world, it's a 5-acre redevelopment site with a subdivision, one homeowners association, the entire exercise. So the intention is actually to build from the north to the south, and it would be built as a cohesive neighborhood. And then I'm going to go to the question of why a two-step process. Our original ask when we came in with the house to say, hey, we've purchased this other piece of property, we'd like to rezone a portion of it MUN. Staff said, well, maybe not so fast. The MUN zoning allows for some stuff that we might not want to see on this site, and I think to make this the best cohesive fit, let's go for the PRD. And so that was really how this became a PRD on its own track. But I think all along staff and we have worked together to try to create when everything is approved, a cohesive, tight development. So a little bit awkward, but I think the right outcome. In terms of MUN down the road for the portion that is MUN, I guess I would just be clear that the next step tonight is to approve a plat, build townhomes on that plat, which would then subdivide the ownership into 79 units. So a person coming along down the road would have to assemble 79 individual properties and tear them down before they could turn it into Kmart. So it's a pretty remote outcome in that regard. And I do think MUN was a good choice for the site with townhomes as the goal outcome. It is a good zone district for this piece. I did want to talk a little bit about the house. The house, the ODP does treat the western planning area basically as R2 zoning today. And even if somebody who owned that house or rented that house down the road wanted to do something different, they'd have to come back here and replat that site and revisit this ODP. So I do think there's good controls in place to protect it. And again, no part of the ODP area, eastern or western, allows for a commercial use. In terms of the access question, two things. One, at the time of the ODP, it is yet to be platted into the units that you see here. So the ownership stays, at the time that you approve this, the ownership is in place and the driveway stays. There is a permanent access agreement, both for vehicular access as well as utilities, that have to stay in place, whereby the I'm going to call it the southwestern ODP area that's in place in favor of that with the property that is the greenhouse property. And the purpose of that is to say, regardless of who owns the two pieces, although in reality we own them all and then Thrive will own them all, you cannot remove that driveway or the utilities that serve that house until such time as not only the ring road is in, but actually the new utilities that will be in that ring road, so that the house will be served by gas, water, electricity, and a driveway access before the other driveway and the other utilities can be taken away. So we have thought that through. It's a private document, but it exists. And then the only thing I thought I would mention about the cul-de-sac is just that it is someone's front yard and driveway today, so it is the condition that they have. So I do think there's some, and it's also how a lot of the neighbors access the school today. So I think leaving that in place. And then my final comment, which is not so much an answer to a question, but just wanted to bring it forward. We've obviously been in the neighborhood now for a year, hogging dirt and construction debris and whatnot out there. So we've gotten to know folks. We're happy to be done with that stage of it. But we also have sat down with the school. And so while they don't officially take positions on things like this, they've been aware as we've been moving along and moving forward. They have seen this site plan, and they are, I guess, happy to have front doors on there, to see the blighted nuisance condition that is the greenhouse go away. Happy to see development coming, and happy that development is both family accessible and teacher affordable. So that's been a positive conversation. So with that, one last word, just an enormous thank you to the staff at the city for what has not been an easy set of documents to fit together, but I think we've landed in a good place. And with that, I'll be quiet and answer any additional questions you have.
Thank you. Commissioner Peterson?
No question.
Commissioner Buckman? Commissioner Dorsey? Commissioner Larson?
No questions.
Commissioner Moss?
I just have one, the existing driveway on that house, what's going to happen to that driveway even though the utilities switch over to another place?
So the driveway will stay until the northern ring road is in. And then when the northern ring road is in, that property gets demolished out and the new subdivision gets platted and those townhomes will get built there. So they'll have a new fence, you know, that'll separate the house from the townhouse, the house on the west from the townhouses on the east. So it's really about the order of operations. Once they get gas and water and electricity from the north, then all of that can come away on the south.
Well, maybe I'm not
Nope.
seeing what's the dimensions of where that house is? How far east does that property?
It sits on about a half an acre. Are you seeing on your screen what's here?
Yes.
Okay, great. So this is the house itself, this little outline shape right here. And this is the proposed new driveway off of this new ring road. So today, this driveway comes down, if you watch this cursor, comes down, runs along this front of this property, and then into this cul-de-sac. Oops. What did I do? Sorry, back, previous, look at me, let go. So, and then it runs right through here. So what'll happen is, this road will get built, and in that road, there will be water and sewer and gas and electricity and all that good stuff. We'll reconnect this house to those utilities and build this driveway into the existing garage. And once that's done, the balance of this driveway can be demolished out, and these townhomes can be built.
Got it.
And that's why I talked about from a phasing perspective, the very first thing we have to do is build this detention pond here, right? Build the detention pond, then build the ring road, then build these townhouses up to the north, and then later on come down and build the townhouses to the south. And we really focused our efforts on this main street here with all the front doors on it and the sidewalks and the access. And here, we turned our backs a little bit on this road and this pond, partially because these are the backs of all the commercial units. That's just dumpsters and trees and fences. So we try to create as big a buffer as we could between the residential space and orienting it that way. So it took a little while to arrive at this, but we're really happy and think it'll be a nice neighborhood, and a nice addition to an existing neighborhood.
Commissioner Leo? I have no questions. Thank you. Okay, let's open up the citizens forum. Are there any citizens that have signed up to speak? I will go through the list first. Jay Garcia, did you wish to speak?
Not unless there are questions specific.
Oh, okay. Is there anybody else in the audience that wishes to come forward and speak? Please come to the podium, state your name and address.
Hi, I'm Diane Chapman. My husband Steve is in the back. We live at 4175 Yarrow Court, so just one house back from 42nd there. We're glad that the greenhouse is gone. Thank you. Looks much nicer. We've been living with that blight for a long time. Our concern is just the traffic. Traffic is really bad now, not just at school time, but people cut Wadsworth all the time and come down our street, roar up and down the street all the time, trying to get past that light at 44th and Wadsworth. So that's our concern, is I don't see any other entrances in and out besides what's already there. And a traffic light at 42nd and Yarrow Court would certainly be silly. But maybe one at 44th and Yarrow Street might be worth looking into, something that helps move the traffic along, because when people are going north on Yarrow Street and they want to go left on 44th, they sit there a long time because there's just a lot of heavy traffic, and there's not enough room if you want to go right to get past there, because the people going left maybe aren't angled enough over. So it just backs up, and that's without 89 new people or however many are going in there. So that's our concern. We'd love to see something go east and west on 42nd, just something to open up the traffic so that it doesn't get backlogged. We'd also love a couple of speed bumps on Yarrow Court at some point. I don't know where we say that, but just so that the traffic, it wouldn't just be constant roaring up the street. So that's all I had to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else in the audience that would like to come forward? Seeing none, I will close the citizens forum. Okay, so the only questions were traffic light at 44th and Watts, and possibility of adding speed bumps.
Yes, speed bumps would always be an option. Under that, you could probably get some speed bumps installed. We do feel that the Wadsworth improvements are going to ease traffic in here once they're complete, although that is going to be probably about 4 years from now. So there may be a 2-year period where Wadsworth improvements aren't yet complete, and you could have some traffic issues. We feel most of the people going north, east, and west are going to head up to the Yarrow and 44th intersection. And it's likely just people heading south will probably head down Yarrow and cut east on 41st to make it to Wadsworth. But a lot of the congestion up there on 44th is going to be alleviated once the Wadsworth improvements are complete, because you're going to have a dedicated right turn lane eastbound on Wadsworth. So that should help alleviate some of that. So yeah, once those are done, we think there'll be improvements in this neighborhood with traffic flows.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for staff or the applicant? Go ahead.
So how long does Thrive expect to take to build all of this? And
You have a question for the applicant?
Thrive.
Oh, Thrive, okay.
Because they're building it, right?
Please state your name and address.
Good evening, Jay Garcia, Thrive Home Builders. Office address is downtown, 1875 Lawrence Street. But I live downtown as well, 2020 Lawrence, Unit 920. And I am the project manager for Thrive Home Builders. Using the cursor to show, as Cameron indicated, we will be doing this northern portion first, which would consist of 49 units. It really kind of, we're a small local home builder, so it kind of depends on sales. As we sell the buildings, we start the buildings. But we have worked with a market study that indicates that we would be selling and building approximately 3 to 4 homes per month. So at that rate, we would develop this northern portion and make the improvements to serve this home as previously indicated. And we anticipate that we would then begin development on this southern portion approximately a year later. And then basically, as we build through this northern portion, then move to the southern portion. As far as the ultimate build out goes, in a really best case scenario, probably 3 years or so. But I don't think realistically any longer than 5.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have one more question for staff regarding traffic. So I understand the future of Wadsworth and how it will alleviate traffic from this development on Yarrow going east. But what if you want to go west on 44th? Currently, there is no right turn lane on Yarrow. So if it's basically a 2-lane right there. If you're a car, and there could be a number of cars wanting to go west on 44th, and they're stacking, and there's cars behind them that they want to go east, I would assume that at some point with the number of vehicles that someone's going to say, well, this doesn't make sense to try to go that way. So they're going the only alternative is to go south, go down 41st, and then go to Ammons where there's another signalized light, and then they can go to west. Correct? Has the city thought about adding a right turn lane on Yarrow?
That we could potentially look at that if it proves to be a problem. I'm not aware of what the right-of-way is up there right now, and how much would need to be acquired. But that could potentially be an option. And just looking at the signal, I mean, currently, you know, if we did signalize that, and we did study that, but since the intersection is staggered, the additional timing cycle would cause you'd impact the traffic, east-west traffic on 44th significantly.
Right.
And since that's a collector, you know, that just wasn't, we didn't think that was a good idea. But we could potentially look at Yarrow Street up there and the right-of-way we have, and potentially look at putting in a right turn lane.
I mean, in the previous project to the north, I've had discussions with Mr. Westberg about the light, and there's an existing pedestrian light just a little off, and I asked him about, you know, doing that, and he said the same thing, that it's just going to congest things, putting a signalized light there. But I know that area, you have three options. You can go left if you want to, you can go straight across 44th, or you can take a right, and sometimes people want to try to go west, take a left there, and then everything behind it is waiting until that person can go left, and sometimes that's kind of tough. That's my only comments on that. Any other questions to staff or the applicant? Okay, I would entertain a motion. Should be on page 14.
Right. I would like to make a motion. Case number WZ-17-08, zone change to ODP. Option A. I move to recommend approval of case number WZ-17-08, a request for approval of a zone change for residential 2 R2 to a planned residential development PRD with an outline development plan for property located at 7955 West 42nd Avenue for the following reasons. The proposed zone change will promote the public health, safety, and welfare of the community. Number 2, the proposed zone change is consistent with the goals and objectives of the city's comprehensive plan and the Wadsworth Sub-Area Plan. Number 3, the zone change will provide redevelopment and revitalization of the property and may serve as a catalyst for other property redevelopment or improvements in the area. Number 4, the criteria used to evaluate a zone change support the request, with the following conditions. All minor corrections occur prior to the public hearing in front of the City Council.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? So do we need to, I guess everybody's okay with the no access easement at this point? I mean, if this was the only case, it'd be a different story. I understand. I guess if everybody's okay with them, I'm okay with it. Okay, call for a vote.
Motion carries 7-0.
And then we also need, now we're on to the SDP. Okay. So we need a motion for the SDP. It starts a little bit on 14 on the bottom there.
I'll make a motion to recommend approval of case number WZ-17-09, a request for approval of a specific development plan for property located at 7955 West 42nd Avenue for the following reasons. 1, the proposal is consistent with the purpose of a planned development. 2, the proposal is in substantial compliance with mixed-use zoning requirements. 3, the proposed site design and use are consistent with the outlined development plan. 4, all requirements for a specific development plan have been met with the following conditions. The final location, alignment, and material of the proposed path to the west across the single-family lot be subject to staff approval. 2, the numbering of the plan set to be resolved prior to City Council public hearing. And 3, all minor corrections occur prior to public hearing in front of City Council.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Call for vote.
Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you. So now we're going to hear the other cases, case WS 1705 and WS 1706. Yeah, that'd be great. Is there a motion to take a 5-minute break?
So move.
Second? Okay. Let's start 45 after. Is everybody ready? I open the public hearing for case number WS-1705 and WS-1706 Era Gardens and ask for the staff report.
Again, members of the commission, Meredith Recker, Wheat Ridge Community Development Department. I'm here to present case numbers WS-1705 and 1706, which are requests for approval of a 73-lot subdivision and a 17-lot subdivision plat, property zoned, mixed-use neighborhood, and pending planned residential development, 4255 Yarrow, 7955 West 42nd. Like to enter into the record case file and packet materials, zoning ordinance, subdivision regulations, comprehensive plan, the contents of this digital presentation. All notification and posting requirements have been met, therefore there is jurisdiction to hear this case.
So noted.
Thank you. So again, we're talking about the same two pieces of property, but well, at least the 7955 West 42nd, in addition to the 4255 Yarrow Street parcels. The cases are being requested to accommodate an 89-unit townhouse development on the combined parcels because both plats exceed 5 lots. Planning Commission will be making a recommendation to City Council. So 4955, which is the southern parcel, again, is located on 42nd Avenue where it ends west of Yarrow. It's currently zoned R2, allowing single and two-family residential. In the process of being considered for planned residential zoning, there's a house on the western portion of the site, and the eastern portion is vacant. Again, 42nd Avenue comes in here and dead ends at the corner, but the right-of-way travels to the west across the frontage of the property. The second site, 4255 Yarrow, it is L-shaped, roughly 400 feet of street frontage along Yarrow and 275 feet along 42nd Avenue. It was rezoned from R2 to mixed-use neighborhood in pursuant to case number WC1608, and the former home to a greenhouse, which was recently demolished and the soil remediated. So here's the zoning map. 4255 Yarrow was zoned mixed-use neighborhood. 7955 West 42nd, currently zoned R2, under consideration for a zone change to planned residential development. So these slides were taken last week. This one is looking northeast towards the 44th and Yarrow intersection. This structure that you see on the left-hand side of the image is the new assisted living facility directly to the north of the Yarrow Street property. Some of this development is the commercial establishments along 44th Avenue. Over here on the right-hand side are some existing apartment units on the east side of Yarrow. Again, there's another picture of those apartment units with the soil. And this is looking northwest, and this is the side of what once was the Vincenza's restaurant, now is currently vacant. This is the entrance from Yarrow Street looking west. So the first of the plats that we're looking at tonight is a 73-lot subdivision involving both properties, the Yarrow Street property and the 42nd Avenue property. You do have a copy of the first filing in your packet. And as typical, sheet one is the declaration page with legal descriptions, signature blocks for property owners, and so on. Sheet two is the actual plat layout itself. 42nd, Yarrow Street runs along the eastern side of the property. Along the south side, we've got 42nd Avenue. Here's the cul-de-sac bulb for 42nd as it dead ends at what I'm going to call the house lot. So there's kind of a lot going on here, but I hope you understand a little bit better now that we have the applicant kind of come up and explain about their ultimate plan to develop the property. So hopefully this makes more sense. So what's happening is both of the properties are being combined into one ownership and then subdivided. So the existing property with the house and the vacant portion on it is going to be a tract. And then the remainder of the L-shaped property is divided into 73 lots. You can see the configuration with the access that comes off Yarrow Drive and then turns into the ring road from where most of the lots are accessed. And let's see, the townhomes are arranged in groupings of 3 to 6 units, and you can see those the way they're laid out. Each of the townhouse units will be on its own separate lot, and they vary in size from about 858 square feet to a little bit over 1,500 square feet. And the lot widths vary in size from about 16.5 to 29.3. Again, primary access is into the site from Yarrow Street. So there's a lot of tracks that serve different functions on the plat. I've tried to call those out in red. The first one is Tract A, which is adjacent to that northern boundary. It extends from over at this location to Yarrow Street. It will encompass the subdivision conveyance for stormwater into the detention pond and landscaping. Tract B is located over here, and it actually will be used for open space between the westernmost units and Happiness Gardens, which is the city-owned open space directly to the west. Tract C runs through the middle of the site and is probably, I guess I would call it the major pedestrian spine that goes through the property. It will encompass open space and paths extending east and west. Tracts D and E accommodate additional paths perpendicular to Tract B. G is down here, and it accommodates 6.5 feet of dedication for 42nd, and I think 1.5 feet for Yarrow. Tract H comes off the primary ring road and provides access through sort of an alley configuration for all of the lots in this southern portion. And finally, Tract I is again, the property address is 7955 West 42nd, which has been brought into the development site. One additional feature is a right-of-way vacation of the northern portion of the cul-de-sac bulb for 42nd Avenue, which again is at this location. As part of it, we will have a secondary access, let me back up one, which is at this location, which will provide the secondary access from 42nd in addition to the Yarrow Street access. And since that turnaround function really isn't needed, someone can go through the development to get back out to Yarrow Street, and so they're requesting a right-of-way vacation for that. So as per normal, we have criteria that we use when we do an evaluation of a request for vacation of right-of-way, and staff has drawn the following conclusions. The Wilmore Davis playfields abut the right-of-way to the south, but are accessed internally from the school on 51st. I think there is some informal access along 42nd Avenue. While we've got the right-of-way that extends all the way over to Ammon Street for 42nd Avenue, it's very doubtful that would ever get extended, and that this access from 42nd Avenue would be needed. Again, in that right-of-way that's dedicated to the west, some of the Happiness Gardens improvements are located in it, and so again, it's very unlikely that that would ever be extended to the west. So the extension of the street is not addressed in the comp plan structure or transportation plan. However, the applicant will be extending a pedestrian path west to the Happiness Gardens, which will increase connectivity for pedestrians. Let's see, we also talked a little bit about the ring road with the secondary access north from 42nd Avenue. And all utility agencies have concluded that they can serve the property even if the right-of-way for that little piece is vacated. So this is the second portion of the plat. This was tract I of the prior plat, which again is that western piece that's got the existing house on it and was subject to the zone change. We have another two-page plat document. This is the declaration page. Again, signatures, legal descriptions, and so on. And then this is the subdivision, which divides up tract I into the house lot on the west, and then the 16 townhouse lots on the east. Again, there are several tracts that are being identified on this. Tract A is the access that comes from the Ring Road and 42nd Avenue and serves as access to the rear of the townhouses. Tract B is a 15-foot buffering strip adjacent to the existing home, and will have a 5-foot sidewalk that travels through there. And finally, C and D are tracts that go between the north and south limits of the property, and I believe are intended to be made of crusher fines. So we're giving a recommendation of approval with conditions for both of the requests, and those are detailed in your staff report under the recommended motions. That concludes my presentation.
Thank you. Commissioner Peterson? Do you have any questions? I can come back to you if you want to. Okay.
In the comments pertaining to both subdivisions, there's a section called on-site drainage design. And the standard is listed as the runoff. The standard is the runoff, historical runoff for undeveloped land. And what you're proposing has a tremendous amount of non-permeable surfaces, lots of roofs, lots of roads, lots of sidewalks. And I guess I need reassurance more than anything that you can actually handle the runoff. The greenhouse used to cover quite a bit of ground, but I think the development actually covers more. And I guess added to that is the question: as the builder, do you build? Would you consider building with more permeable surfaces like the roads and sidewalks?
So I can respond to the first part of that question. Yeah, there are a lot of impermeable surfaces, but it does meet urban drainage requirements. I don't have the specific numbers on hand, but I think the runoff for the greenhouses was about 15 CFS in the 100-year storm, and for this development, the runoff would be just under that. I think it's about 13 or 14 due to the detention basin, so you're just holding all that water and releasing it at a slower rate. And I know some of the pavers and impermeable surfaces that I've had experience with don't always work well in Colorado soils with the, clay soils and kind of impermeable soils anyway. But I'm sure there are some options that, that may work that I haven't explored. But yeah, everything meets urban drainage, and runoff will actually be reduced from the greenhouse site.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. T
Commissioner Buckman? Commissioner Larson?
No questions.
Commissioner Voss?
I do one. Meredith, can you go back to your first page, cover page? Last, mixed use, MUN at 4255 Yarrow Street and 7955. The 7955 is not mixed use?
Well, I spent all day on these PowerPoints, and as I have been going through them tonight, it's like, oh gee, there's a mistake there, there's a mistake there, how embarrassing. It should, I guess, read mixed-use neighborhood and plan residential development, like pending in parentheses, so.
Well, I just wanted to make sure that we were.
Yeah, no, I'll make those corrections before city council when we go to hearing.
Thank you.
Commissioner Leo? I had one question for staff. There's a comment that talks about that the detention basin will release to the Yarrow Street curb and gutter through a sidewalk chase. It doesn't, and I understand that, what it's doing as far as releasing. I guess the comment is, I have been out there during rainstorms along Wadsworth and 44th, and it doesn't function very, very well. It's that's kind of understated. It really doesn't work. And so, what do you mean by release? Release in 100-year or any rain?
So yeah, in a smaller storm, like a 2-year or a 5-year storm, you're probably not even. It's probably going to improve the conditions there because that detention basin is so large. You'll get some infiltration in that basin, and some of that water will just infiltrate in the basin and not even be released. So you might see some slight improvement in the smaller storms. But you're right, in a 100-year storm, it's a mess up there, and that's just due to the lack of infrastructure that we have as a city. So be that as it may, this development isn't going to make that any worse. In fact, the numbers show that it will slightly improve that. It's not going to solve it. It's still going to, there's still going to be a lot of water up there. But it does meet the urban drainage requirements, and I think that's just the city's infrastructure up there is lacking. We have a lot of overland drainage, and we just don't have the underground storm sewer that we would need. But we did look at all the street spreads and everything. So in your 100-year storm, you still have a passable lane along Yarrow Street. Which is what urban drainage requires.
When they do the Wadsworth improvements, will that drain that is on that corner, I would imagine it's going to have to be relocated. Will there be any improvements to that, or will that really not make a difference? You're just relocating the...
That's a good question. Mark Westberg is kind of leading up that project, so he could be able to tell you more. But I think we are making some storm improvements, so hopefully we're at least increasing the inlet size there at that intersection. I don't think we're extending anything to the west along 44th, unfortunately. But yeah, I think you might see some improvements in general right at that intersection and reductions in ponding depths and things of that nature.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead. I'm done with my questions.
So I just have one quick question on the first plat, Tract B, the open space over to the west. Yeah, there's a little 10-foot wide measured north to south spot between lot 5 and lot 6 over in block 4. Yeah, is that part of Tract B?
Yes.
Okay.
And it will be a sidewalk connection from the Ring Road. The units in this location face west.
Okay.
And so it will be a sidewalk connection that connects to another sidewalk in Tract B.
To the fronts of these
Yes.
lots. Okay, great. It's sort of hard to tell with the dashed line for the easement line that was existing And yeah, so I just wanted to make sure I understood that. Okay, thank you.
Was the intent to somehow connect to Happiness Gardens?
Pardon me?
Was the intent, if there's gonna be a sidewalk through that area, is the intent to try to connect to Happiness Gardens?
Well, we're connecting they are connecting to Happiness Gardens through this
Okay.
sidewalk that's going to be extended along the south side
Okay,
of the house lot.
okay, thank you. Are there any other questions for staff? Let's hear from the applicant. If the applicant would like to come forward, state your name and address.
Hi, Cameron Bertrand, 1145 Gaylord Street, Denver, Colorado, EFG Denver. I don't think I have any more comments to add. I'd be happy to take any additional questions you all have. I will say one thing about Happiness Gardens, because we worked with Margaret quite a bit at the Parks Department on it. We had originally talked about punching it through there because we thought it would be cool, and she made the point that she doesn't, that you don't really want people entering the middle of the gardens where people are gardening, and the real entrance to the garden is to the south there. That's where you come at it from Ammon Street, and that's where the handicap gardens are and all that. So that's how that path ended up on the south side, was really working with Parks and Rec. So other than that, any other questions you guys have, I'd be happy to answer.
Are there any questions from the applicant? There are none. Thank you. I will now open up the citizens forum. Are there any citizens that have signed up to speak?
It's the
I don't
same
think
list.
What's that?
It's the same list as
Okay.
the previous case.
Is there anybody in the audience? It looks like there's no other person in the audience, so I will close the citizens forum. At this point, I would entertain a motion, and the first motion will be, there's two motions. The first one's on the WS 1705.
I move to recommend approval of case number WS 1705, a request for approval of a 73-lot subdivision plat for property located at 4255 Yarrow and 7955 West 42nd Avenue for the following reasons. 1, all requirements of the subdivision regulations have been met. 2, the proposed plat will facilitate redevelopment of the site. 3, utility districts can serve the property with improvements installed at the developer's expense, with the following conditions. 1, all minor corrections occur prior to public hearing in front of City Council. 2, a development covenant be executed prior to recordation of the subdivision plat. 3, the developer shall pay parks fees at the time of SIA recording.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? I can say that I am definitely in favor of having the larger detention as opposed to just undergrounding all the water through the storm. So I think that's a good thing. And then now that we've kind of seen all the property lines, because there's obviously I had some concerns of like, well, how does the house work being in the townhomes? So it makes a little more sense. And then looking at the kind of at the SDP where it shows the entrances are facing the street, I think the developer did a nice job of that, of facing those out, so that we're not just looking at garages. So, any other discussion? Call for a vote.
Motion carries 7-0.
And now we need a motion on the second one. Is there a motion for the WS 1706?
I'll make the motion for case number WS 17-06. I move to recommend the approval of case number W 17-06, a request for approval of a 17-lot subdivision plat for property located at 7955 West 42nd Avenue for the following reasons. All requirements of the subdivision regulations have been met. Number 2, the proposed plat will facilitate redevelopment of the site. Number 3, utility districts can serve the property with improvements installed at the developer's expense, with the following conditions. All minor corrections occur prior to public hearing in front of the City Council. Number 2, a development covenant be executed prior to recordation of the subdivision plat. Number 3, the developer shall pay parks fees at the time of SIA recording.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Call for vote.
Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you. So Meredith, we won't be seeing, I like the landscape plan that was done on the smaller 17 acre, because we can see that looks really nice. We won't be seeing a landscape plan for the larger part though, right? I think that'll be administrative. Okay.
Yeah, the large portion, because of the mixed use zoning, is an administrative site plan.
Okay, thank you.
Certainly, Dr. Simpson will come into the office and take a look.
Okay, thank you. I might take you up on that. Okay, is there any old business to discuss? Meredith?
I don't have anything. Do you have any old business? We have new business.
No old business.
Okay, new business. I see election of officers. Thank you for coming. So just to remind everybody, currently there is not a vice chair. The vice chair is gone, so that does not currently exist. So anybody is open to vice chair, including myself. I cannot be reelected as the chair. So you can't be reelected to the same position, if that makes sense. So I can't be reelected chair. I could be reelected vice chair, and the vice chair can't be reelected to vice chair, but that's a moot point since he's no longer on the commission. So this will be done by secret ballot.
Yeah.
You can also vote for somebody who's not here.
Yes, sometimes.
Yes, we can. As I remember you all doing that to me.
All right.
So,
Yeah.
So we'll start with chair vote.
Okay.
Okay.
Put them up there.
Without having some indication of interest in the role, just throw dart.
Well, I can tell you, Alan has been chair before.
Okay.
Obviously, I'm chair. I don't think Amanda has ever been chair or vice chair.
you want to read them off? Oh, we're still.
And then something to think about too, that I feel like the chair at some point may have to, or the vice chair may have to chair. And so the vice chair may or may not have the least amount of experience. You could, yeah. there is no vice chair here tonight.
I'm still
Did
having
everybody-
trouble, at least even
Knowing
coming
people's
up with an
names.
idea, because I don't know who, if somebody's interested, somebody's not interested,
The other thing too is that, like, I can tell you that sometimes if you want it, vote for yourself. That's another option.
I'd have to say right now that I'm not interested. This being my third meeting. Yeah.
Well, so I don't know if this helps, but our most senior members are Scott, Alan, Amanda, and then I think Emery, right? So those are the 4 senior members. Janet and Vivian, how long, Janet? Has it been a year and a half, and Vivian about 6 months? No, a year in March.
So that might help you a little bit on seniority, who's been here the longest.
Well, you have. And you can't
Well,
be the
he's been
chair.
here, he's been longer than me.
Oh, okay.
He's probably number 1, I'm number 2.
Okay.
But I cannot be
See
chair.
what happens when you stick around?
Now, do you have a drum roll?
No, I just did, just chair. Just chair.
Simple majority.
All right, so Alan, you're chair again.
Third time's a charm. Hopefully I'll remember all the rules this time. I'll break out my Robert's Rules of Order pocketbook. All right. There you go.
She's probably coming back mid-June. Yeah, so, and sounds like she's loving, the second child is always easiest. Supposedly. Yeah.
Sometimes the parents are a little more relaxed with the
I
second
think
one.
that's right. Yeah. But he's a cutie.
I,
2 boys, Harrison and Henry. Henry's the new baby.
March 28th, or no, March 31st. All right, so Amanda is our vice chair.
all right. Yep.
You're telling me. That's pretty thick.
And there's a lot of papers. Thanks for hanging in there and working through it. So,
I love the explanation of the applicant, that just cleared it all up.
yeah.
That was a tough one, just because I've done lot mergers and rezonings, but it's like, this is two different zonings, and it was complicated, so. Yeah. Well, I have ideas why things happen as they do, and it's kind of I think it was probably a wait and see. And so that's why things.
First go around and then make an offer on that.
Yeah. We're ready to adjourn. Is there a motion to adjourn, or did you not want to adjourn?
No, I do. I just
Okay.
have one thing I want to say, but
Okay. Is there a motion to adjourn? Second. Call for vote.
Motion passes 7-0.